Good evening, everybody. I'm going to call this meeting to order, the meeting of the City Council on July 22nd. Karen, to start us off, will you please call a roll call?
Yes, Councilmember Feist,
Here.
Councilmember Reardon,
Here.
Councilmember Swift,
Here.
Councilmember Sirk,
Here.
Mayor Gunzelman.
Here. And Member Sirk is participating remotely. If you can all join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That brings us to the public forum. At this time, the public is permitted to address the City Council on items not appearing on the agenda. Comments may not exceed 5 minutes. In accordance with state law, however, no action or discussion may take place on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. The City Council may respond to statements made or questions asked, or may request staff to report back at a future meeting on the matter. Would anyone like to address the council on an item not on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on to the city manager's report. Tom?
Yep. Good evening, council. As always, kind of go through some updates according to our priorities for the year. So in terms of roadways, we actually have a newly paved road, Eureka Road. And then Ora Madre is being worked on starting last week. And then the third radar sign is up on Gopher Flat. And so we have a fourth one that's going up on Ridge Road. That's the last one. In terms of a sustainable budget, so hopefully tonight we're approving the final draft of the budget for the year. I also want to mention, it has to go back to the ARSA board. There were some outstanding invoices between ARSA and ION that, you know, we did settle the lawsuit, but we still had these outstanding invoices. So we had a meeting last week. Mayor Gunzelman and Councilmember Swift attended, and there were 2 ION council members, and we kind of came to an agreement that has to be ratified by their city council and by the ARSA board. And then everything will be behind us, hopefully. We are beginning work on the audit for this most recent year behind us. And we're also starting to look at what a software transition will look like. It'll probably take 3 or 4 months. We're going to get through this first step of the audit and then probably start on that. And then on wastewater, there was a lot of activity since the last council meeting. We got 2 letters from the Regional Water Board asking us to create a water balance for ARSA and then a joint water balance with ION and Mule Creek. And then the Water Board had a meeting last week that everybody attended. So that's going to be in process. I've asked Bill at Hydrosciences to help me with the work needed to do that. We're going to have a pretty strict timeline to comply. Also met with a second engineering firm that builds wastewater plants and just really gathering information, doing research. And then I'm also having a meeting with different folks at the Water Board just to understand the requirements for discharging to creeks.
Hey, Tom.
Yep.
For neophytes like myself, can you, in 100 words or less, describe water balance?
Just the total inflows and outflows. So the historic problem has been the amount of water that we have and Mule Creek has is more than ION wants to take. And contractually, they're obligated to take more. So it's not in balance.
Thank you.
Basically, the Water Board's sick of all the squabbling. So they said, you guys figure it out.
Figure it out. Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
And Tom, I'd like to add, above and beyond the discussions about the past or the invoices that we had with ION, that the tone of the meeting was very positive. And I think everybody left with a feeling a good spirit of cooperation and optimism about working together in the future.
Yeah.
Also, one more quick thing, and especially why the chief is here. The traffic sign, radar sign up on Sutter Hill Road. Typically, several times I come by, it just says, starting PMG, or it's just not working. Maybe it doesn't get enough sunlight, but anyway, it's just something to be aware of.
On Sutter Hill?
Yeah,
Okay. How early in the morning are you going?
I've seen it both morning and afternoon,
Okay.
not
I'll-
working.
Yeah, it's really the public works.
And
guy.
Dan's not here, so if Dan was here, he would get the word, but I just didn't even think about it until you showed the picture of it. That's all.
Yeah, it's solar. It was working today, but it must depend on the
It was
sun.
working today. I came
Yeah.
by today and it was working.
But must be a function of the sun. And on the economic development front, it's kind of putting things that really impact the economics of the city generally. So there was a 10 single-family home project that was denied by the planning commission that's been appealed. It's going to come to you guys the next council meeting. There's an interesting company that I'm talking to. I think it's pronounced Humengi. It's a mortarless brick to build houses out of. They want to open a factory here. We'll see. It's early days. Sounds interesting. And then Jody's here tonight. We put together this Monteverde walking tour, and it's really a self-serve thing. The idea was to have people visit the museum. They pick up a map and they have to take pictures at 6 locations. So it makes them walk around town. And then when they come back, we still had some things left over from when the city ran the visitor center. So if they show their 6 pictures in the Monteverde store, they can get a t-shirt or a coffee cup. So
Good idea.
we want to promote it just as kind of the Sutter Creek walking tour.
Great. Tom, on the Broadmeadow business, so it's going to come to us. Before it comes, will we get more information about what the issues are, why it was denied, what's happening next, all that? I feel like I need to be educated.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it'll come in your packet. It'll have everything. Yeah.
Thank you.
And then just some other things. So we had our 4th of July pool party. I think it was generally a success. Hopefully we can build on it for next year. We've also started to install these stands for volleyball nets in the auditorium. So the middle school wants to use them, but I'm also thinking maybe down the road we could have, open gym night or something if people want to play volleyball. And then we also, the air conditioner unit's out in the Monteverde office, so we bought a temporary unit. You're going to hear more about that later tonight a little bit. And then some upcoming events. We've got the county fair, the Barbera Festival, and then at the end of August, Sutter Creek's Fireman's Ball. We have some volunteers that are helping. We're going to do a concert in the park for sure in September. We're still trying to see if we can do it in August, but it's looking a little iffy. But so Friday, September 13th, there'll be a concert in the park. And then on the 21st, there's a Feast of the Foundry.
Is the Barbera Festival held here in town? Or is that
Yeah, I don't know,
is
actually.
that a Shenandoah thing? Oh, the tasting rooms participate.
It's also in Plymouth, right?
It's
Yeah.
at Teradoro.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Sutter Creek Wineries, I think, so. Yeah, it's open to whatever winery wants to sign up, as long as you produce Barbera.
And the Italian Society has their beer fest coming up in August. I can't remember the exact date, but I'll get that for you.
Is that
It's at the Italian Picnic Grounds, which is in the city.
great? And then, sorry for the small print. So our next meeting, we had talked about, you guys had said you wanted to do a nexus study. when we went over the kind of impact based on index fees, and it's been a long time since we did one. So this will probably be on consent, but I'm going to bring back the contract for that. I think we can do it under a grant that we have. Every year we're supposed to do an annual report on impact fees. I don't think one was done last year, so we're going to catch up. We'll do last year and this year. Hopefully Julia will provide a bike ped update at that meeting. And then we'll have the details. Well, I may not have it for you guys because it needs to go to the ARSA board first on this ARSA invoice. I already mentioned the appeal. And then the Crestview Lighting District, same thing, that hasn't come to you guys in a while. The PG&E bills have continued to go up, so we're going to bring an update on that. It's really just paying the electric bill for the lights.
What's the Kramer Hills parcel map?
That is I think it's the church. There's a stairway there that is on the map. It's a road, and they want to reconfigure their parking lot. And we have
Because the Kramer Hills is the subdivision up off of,
maybe I'm confusing which one this is.
yeah, okay,
I'm not sure.
okay.
And then the second meeting in August, we're going to try to bring you guys some city code cleanup, a couple different areas. And then there'll be the second half of the Crestview lighting, which will be the public hearing. And then the county assessor asked to come give you guys an update. And there'll probably be some more items by the time we get to August 19th. And that's it.
Any questions for Tom from the council,
No, thank you.
from the public?
Actually, I do.
Yep.
So I actually came prepared to, I gave, Tom, I think you received the proposal from, John Gedney, from the Bike Ped Committee. And you asked, anyway, I'm prepared this evening to give an update based on that. But if you want to hold that off until the 5th, I'm okay with that too.
Maybe we could do it in council member comments tonight.
Okay, yes, that's what I was thinking.
Did the public have any questions for Tom? Oh, okay. That brings us to item 5. We have a presentation to do. For Jody. Jody, did you want to come up for it or do you want to sit right there? It's totally up to you. Okay, great. I had the privilege of being able to write down some of my thoughts about Jody, and I'll read them and present them to her, but I'm sure the rest of you have something to say. Do you guys want to go ahead?
Well,
I'd like to start. Jody, I just want to thank you for every time that I came into the office, with or without Kirby, you were there with a smile. And that just goes a long, long way. And I will miss that along with your knowledge and expertise. But thank you for just the way that you presented a welcoming environment to the office.
Thanks, Julia. Dan?
hi, Jody. It's so nice to see you, and we're glad to be honoring you this evening. I didn't get to work with you for a long time, but the short time I did, it's just been a pleasure. And I really appreciate everything that you've done to help me get squared away and all the business that we've been doing with the volunteers and all that stuff. And so thank you so much for your support. And I agree, your bright smile is a very positive aspect. So thank you.
I think everything I was thinking, if I say it, it would just be a repeat of what was just said, but I gotta say, Jody, it's always a pleasure to work with you. I've worked with you, and not only are you easy to work with and just a positive attitude, you do a really good job too. So thank you very, very much, and best wishes in your next endeavor.
Congratulations and thank you for all your help and kindness and service to the city. So good luck with everything.
Yeah, I want to say thank you too, Jody. We didn't work together that long, but you juggled so many different balls. You were, mentioned your smile, but you were always pleasant, super reliable. I really enjoyed working with you, and I'm glad you're here with your husband tonight, and I hope you guys really enjoy your retirement. So,
I work with you since you were hired. Every month I come in and
Yeah.
spend a couple hours working on my stuff. And you always were helpful, and you had a great smile, and you had nice treats too.
Mason?
Where do I begin? Um, I've only been here a year now, but I would not be where I am and how much knowledge that I have and the processes that I know without you being there. I can't talk and turn at the same time. And I just owe so much to you and your knowledge, and my comfort level now with how things work in our office. And it all stems from your workflow, your kindness, your everything that you've done for that office and everything you've done for the city. It truly shows, and it will carry a legacy for a long time. So thank you for everything you did for me and for Holly and Marianne and Christy and everyone in our office and everyone from the city. Truly, it means the world. Thank you.
Chief? Karen? Are you there?
I am here. Thank you for the chance to say something. Jody, over the years, you have been everything everybody has already said. But I don't want to pass on the chance to second, third, and fourth it. You have been just an asset to the city. Everybody has benefited from you and your experience. You will be missed, and you are leaving City Hall and the city a much better place than you found it. So thank you.
Man, that's also nice. Jody, aside from this, I just wanted to say that positivity really is the greatest power, and you exude it. And whoever you spend your time with besides Lou in your retirement and whatever you decide to take on, they're lucky to have you. And that being said, I'm going to read a proclamation of the City Council of the City of Sutter Creek, recognizing Jody Arroyos for her service and honoring her invaluable contributions and many accomplishments on behalf of Sutter Creek. Whereas Jody was hired as a part-time account clerk April 13th, 2015. Over 8 years, Jody accepted full-time employment with the city, took on additional duties within the Building and Finance Department, and is retiring June 2024 as Deputy Finance Supervisor. Whereas Jody has been a fundamental member of the City of Sutter Creek team. She has been a mainstay in the front office, consistently taking on additional duties as needed, especially in 2018 with the reorganization of the Building Department and in 2023 with the reorganization of the Finance Department. Jody is a consummate team player and is always willing to help coworkers even when her own plate is full. Whereas Jody looked for the opportunity in everything. She leveraged her multi-departmental experience to improve city functions. Jody initiated the Dropbox for sewer payments. She developed the application and review procedures for special events. and she has been instrumental in facilitating the arduous OES and FEMA reimbursement processes. All these contributions and many more have resulted in increased communication, efficiency, and continuity of service to the community. Whereas Jody's commitment to Sutter Creek is well illustrated by the fact that she pushed out her retirement many times over several years. She has been a rock for the city, a foundational staff member who has kept things running smoothly through many changes. During transitions, Jody has been responsible for training and cross-training the front office staff and has implemented procedures for many city functions. Whereas Jody has been a dedicated and patient public servant, willing and capable of helping citizens navigate city processes and problem solve together. Whereas Jody's love for our city, dedication to our citizens, and confidence and capability made her a stalwart resource, sounding board, and barometer for the many council members during her tenure. Now therefore be it resolved, I, Mayor Claire Gunzelman, on behalf of the City Council, citizens, and employees of the City of Sutter Creek, do hereby issue this proclamation to Jody Arroyos and her heart of gold in recognition of giving her all to the City of Sutter Creek. Jody will be deeply missed by her coworkers, council, and the public. However, we collectively have no doubt that whatever space she occupies during her retirement will benefit from her joy, integrity, and positivity. And we have the resolution for you. If we can adjourn for a minute to take some pictures with Jody, we'd all appreciate it.
Okay, all right.
Almost everyone in the building.
Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Bye.
I'm going to call us back into order. Item 6 is the approval of minutes from the June 24th council meeting. Did anyone have any comments, or I'll hear a motion?
I move to approve the minutes of June 24th.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. All in favor? We have to do everything with roll call tonight. So Karen, can you take that over?
Yes. Councilmember Feist,
Sorry. Aye.
Councilmember Reardon,
Aye.
Councilmember Swift,
Aye.
Councilmember Seer,
Aye.
Mayor Gunzelman.
Aye.
Thank you. It's 5-0.
Thanks, Karen. Brings us to the consent agenda. 2 items on the consent agenda. I can hear a motion to approve it on consent, or we can pull one if needed.
I'd move to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
There's a motion and a second. Can you do a roll call, please, Karen?
Councilmember Feist,
Aye.
Councilmember Reardon,
Aye.
Councilmember Swift,
Aye.
Councilmember Seer,
Aye.
Mayor Gunzelman.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, there's no public hearings tonight. First item on the administrative agenda is our energy audit. And Christina is going to present that for us.
Yeah, so before I came on, I think Sandy was talking to the Sierra Business Council about this potential project. And so when I came on, we started to engage with Christina. She's been working with us for several months now. And tonight, we're going to give you kind of an update on what she's been working on. So, Christina.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you, everybody, for having me. My name is Christina Weldon, and I'm the Civic Spark Fellow with Sierra Business Council in Truckee on the Climate and Energy team. This is going to be about a 20-minute presentation about Sutter Creek's energy use results. And if anybody has questions while I go through this, please stop me and I'll try to clarify the best I can. Next. So Sierra Nevada Energy Watch, or SNEW for short, is a program run by Sierra Business Council and funded through the PG&E Public Purchase Program surcharge on your energy bills. We offer no-cost services, including facilitating energy audits and project initiation, benchmarking analyses of your facilities, and connecting you with financing programs for energy upgrades. Next. Benchmarking reports are a useful tool to analyze your building energy usage trends over time and also predict where your energy use and costs could be going in the future. Typically, they consist of 3-year energy data. For Sutter Creek, we pulled from January of 2021 to December of 2023. And sometimes this can yield outliers because a 3-year time frame may seem long, but if there are facilities that have equipment that isn't functioning properly for a certain number of years, it can kind of change the trends that we see over time. So we just want to be mindful of that going into this. And one of the ones I'll talk about is the wastewater treatment plant. Next. We also want to be mindful of California's emissions reduction goals and bills. SB 32 and AB 1272 both state that California must reduce emissions to 48% below the 1990 levels by 2030 and 85% below the 1990 levels by 2045. Also, along with this, California aims to reach carbon neutrality by 2045. And because residential and commercial buildings, including government facilities, account for 25% of California's total greenhouse gas emissions, they're a good place to start to identify energy wasters and improve. Next. These are the facilities that we're going to be talking about today. That includes the auditorium, the community building, the administrative building, the historic grammar school, and the wastewater treatment plant. We also, for the actual report, we analyzed the Monteverde General Store and the wastewater treatment plant office building, but they account for such a small portion of your total energy cost that I decided to leave them out just for the sake of time. Next.
And the store wasn't even really being occupied for a big chunk of time.
Yeah.
So that's probably going to change.
Yeah, the store has irregular usage as well. Thanks.
Again, just getting the power bills for this, Christina worked with us, like, some of these buildings are wired together on 1 meter. and
Yeah.
Just figuring things out took a while.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. I'll actually say that in this slide just so we can, state it ahead of time. But the community building and the admin building are going to be tied together for their electricity usage. So when we're analyzing those buildings, we can't analyze them independently. So you're going to see in next slides that they're kind of being treated as one facility. So this is the wastewater treatment plant's monthly electricity usage. I wanted to pull this graph just so you guys can see what I was talking about with the outliers. But in 2021, we have the aerator and recirculation pumps running at their normal capacity. And then somewhere along the fall of that year, they broke or malfunctioned. So this electricity use that you're seeing in 2022 and 23 is a lot lower than we would normally expect it to be.
Yeah, and talking to Dan, even back then, we're not sure everything was operating.
Mhm.
And so, as we go look for grants for a new wastewater plant, this kind of hurts us a little bit because our baseline's not really correct.
Yeah.
It's, there's just things that haven't been functioning, so our energy bill's been lower than it really should be.
So this chart kind of shows you the total energy costs for all of these facilities annually. And again, I'm just putting an asterisk next to the wastewater treatment plant because this average is the 3-year between 2021 and 23. So this $19,700 per year is a lot lower than we would expect it to be. But overall, for natural gas and electricity costs for all of these facilities, you are seeing like about an $80,000 bill per year on just energy costs. Next, sorry. This is a chart with electricity usage. So before that slide was about energy overall, but this specifically is about usage trends. So we can see that the auditorium and the community and admin buildings tied together are both increasing over 3 years, the auditorium by 10% and the community and admin buildings by 38%. The historic grammar school is actually seeing a decrease in electricity usage by 21%, which is good to see. And like I said, wastewater treatment plants being left out of these trend calculations for the city-wide trends. So we're seeing an 11% increase in electricity usage over 3 years, discounting that facility. Next. So along with usage, we're looking at the costs as well. So the auditorium and the community building we saw before were both increasing in electricity usage, but they're increasing at a much higher rate in cost. The auditorium by 38% and the community and admin by 76%. The historic grammar school is seeing a decrease in 2% of cost, but before we were seeing a decrease in 21%. So the discrepancy here between usage and cost is just that electricity rates across the whole country are increasing, and we can really only be as efficient as possible to combat that. So with all of these facilities on this graph here, we're seeing an overall increase in electricity costs by 39%, which is equivalent to the city spending $15,350 more in 2021 than, or in 2023 than in 2021. Next. So natural gas costs are actually increasing at a higher rate than electricity costs are, and we can see that in every single facility at Sutter Creek. Here, I'll just point out that we're separating the community building and the admin building because they have 2 independent gas meters, so we can actually analyze their usage and their costs separately. But the most notable thing on this slide is the historic grammar school is increasing by 118% over 3 years in cost. And overall, these facilities account for a 56% increase in gas costs, or the equivalent of $5,346 more in 2023 than 2021. Next.
Is gas just primarily used for heating in all of these?
Yes, and great question, because I'll talk about that in this slide, but did you want to?
Sure, at the grammar school, was the HVAC unit gas powered?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so at the grammar school, that's the facility that I wanted to emphasize the most in this presentation for gas usage, because we're seeing this increase in 67% of usage, but a much higher increase of 118% in cost. And like you just said, the gas is being used primarily just for space heating in the wintertime. So we see these kind of spikes every winter. And you can see in the orange area graph here that your usage is increasing, but this dashed line is the cost line. And that is getting wider and wider every year for this facility. Next. This is the auditorium's monthly gas usage. I just wanted to include this as well since it is the second highest user of gas at the city. We see kind of the same trend here where we have the spikes in the winter when space heating is necessary, but this is a good example of how gas costs are increasing at a much higher rate because you actually decreased in usage by 7%, but we saw an increase in costs by 27% still. Next. I wanted to include the auditorium's electricity usage as well, just so we can talk a little bit about rate schedules and time of use rates. So this color coordination here corresponds to the orange is peak times and the yellow is partial peak times. So we can see that in the summertime, during these kind of like spikes here, we see yellow and orange being used. That is when electricity is being used between 2 and 11 p.m. The on-peak usage is just 4 to 9 p.m. all year round, and then in the summertime, they implement this like 2 to 4 and 9 to 11 p.m. So you just want to be mindful of using electricity during these hours because that's when it costs the most. So there's certain things that we can do without doing any upgrades really, but something called load shifting would be using electricity at times during the day when it's cheaper. So like cooling the building in the morning and then keeping the cool air in as long as possible by shutting windows and doors and shades so that you don't have to be trying to cool the facility between the most expensive hours of the day. Next. So we have a couple prospective projects happening at the city to combat some of this high energy use. Firstly, we're looking at energy efficiency upgrades. We've done an audit of all facilities and we had a trade professional come out and look at mainly HVAC and insulation. And we're also looking into controls. So smart controls with some of the facilities would help kind of monitor what temperature facilities are being set to and what times, and that can help you kind of load shift as well for air conditioning in the summertime. We also are looking at a couple solar and storage projects within the wastewater treatment plant and the auditorium and community building. Actually, if you would just go to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about next one. Yeah. This is the location that we're looking at the auditorium and community building solar and storage program. This would help the city save a lot of money on electricity bills because you'd be able to generate electricity on site just by use of the sun. And the storage component of this is actually a battery that sits on site so that if you produce more solar than needed to run the facility, you can store it on site and then use it at times where electricity is most expensive. So it would help you avoid some of these on-peak and partial peak times. This project is in we have an initial proposal received, but we are following up with the trade professional to push it forward. Would you actually go back one slide now? So back to our energy efficiency upgrades. I just wanted to talk about how these would be financed. So we had an audit done already, like I said, and we're waiting for the proposal to come back to see which facilities make financial sense, or basically which facilities are going to qualify for OBF or on-bill financing. And that is a basically 0% loan where you pay off your energy upgrade with the savings that you see on your bill. So you wouldn't see any monthly change to your bill. There wouldn't be any upfront cost, but you would just pay it off with the savings that you get. And then once it's paid off, you actually see those savings on your bill. Next and next.
But that's,
Do you have
but that's not for the solar.
No, not for the solar project actually has other funding
Yeah.
that's being leveraged, like the IRA and direct pay and SGIP, I think. But they are in the process of implementing an OBF program, so that might be something that the city qualifies for. We just don't quite know yet, but.
Yeah.
You have a question, Jim?
Well, I didn't realize that we weren't talking about solar until I started to ask my question, but if you had any idea what the payback period time is,
For the
the
energy efficiency.
OBF
OBF,
on finance.
it has to be paid off. You have to basically pay it off in 10 years.
Okay.
That's, yeah.
To qualify.
To qualify. Yeah, you could pay it off faster than that if you're seeing a lot of energy savings.
Okay.
But
So that's what we're waiting for on the HVAC stuff is the payback analysis.
yeah, so some things like window replacements, for example, don't have a very quick payback period because they don't save a lot of electricity or energy. So those typically don't really qualify for OBF programs, but sometimes the HVAC projects are some that should qualify.
I think they told us probably looks like the auditorium and the grammar school will make sense. And then Monteverde store, the air conditioning's actually broken. So it's a reasonable proposal. We'll probably
Okay.
take it.
So when you mentioned the auditorium, that it would make sense. We're talking now about the HVAC,
Right,
Okay.
yes.
not solar.
Yeah, the solar, trying to remember how that proposal worked. It's been a while.
Yeah, it was, I think it was a 7-year loan, if I'm thinking correctly.
That's right. Yeah, so there's nothing out of pocket. And then like your savings over 7 years had to pay back the
Mhm.
loan.
So,
This one's on hold. I
Mhm.
mean, once they give us a real proposal, I'll bring it to you guys.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
we would
sorry, go ahead.
replace the HVAC with something more efficient? Is that what you do? Or?
Yes, and also facilities that have like gas powered heating. We want to transition those to electricity if we can because
Yeah.
we're also going to look at a solar project, but electricity rates are increasing by less than gas rates are. Gas is just really expensive, and we're also trying to meet the California emissions reduction goals.
Thank you.
I had a couple questions.
Go ahead.
One is, who controls or where are the controls in the auditorium and the administrative offices right now? Is there just one thermostat that sets the temperature in say the whole
Yep.
lower level, but both sides and the auditorium?
I don't think so. I know the admin building, it's programmed. I'm not sure where the controls in the auditorium and if people can override it or not.
Because I know that when they have the exercise classes, they probably, will set to a cooler temp. But there's also been times, for example, when I've even got my mail over in that little meeting room, it's like frigid cold. So that's being cooled, but it's not used on a regular basis, like the regular offices are. So that's why I was wondering how or which registers or thermostats set the controls in that building.
Julia,
And can those be more closely monitored maybe also just to save proactively on our own before if and when we move to the solar plan?
Julia, it's Mason. I'm just gonna chime in because it's kind of
Okay.
I spent a lot of my time in those 3 rooms. The conference room that's really cold all the time. That was left that way because the servers for the city data is in that room, and there's only one control in that room. It controls only that
Aha.
room.
Okay.
So they keep it colder than normal just so the servers run hot. So they try and
I
keep
get
them at
it.
70 some odd degrees. The city hall, we have our own control.
Good.
We just keep it at 75 usually. And then it goes up to like 90 or 80 something at night. So
Oh,
we
wow.
try and it warms up overnight, so we don't try and keep a cool room where there's no one in there. And then in the morning, we'll set it. The timer sets to like 75 at like 6 a.m. So when I get in, it's cooler.
Yeah, and I'm
And
not
then-
questioning those that work over in your office and your side, Mason, because that sees all that afternoon sun coming in right in those windows. I get that. I was just curious about if that same thermostat's at the other side. So
No.
thank you, Mason. That all makes sense. My other question is, for the groups that use the auditorium, whether the athletic groups or the jazzercise groups, do we share or pass on any of the energy expense with them?
They do pay utility costs, but I believe they have a special contract that's been around for a long time, and I'm not quite sure how much they pay. But they do pay some utility bill.
Okay. All right.
The auditorium has a swamp cooler, and the controls up on the stage, it doesn't just kick on automatically. We have to go in there and turn it on ourselves.
Okay.
So that's manual. We have to turn it on and off by hand, to my knowledge.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Mason.
Of course.
Is there air conditioning in the auditorium as well?
Yeah, it's just one big swamp cooler.
It's not really air conditioning.
And it's not really yeah, and it doesn't really work that well.
They use a lot of individual fans, I think, for jazzercise too. I know when I go through.
Yeah, we turn those on before their night classes for them, so they at least cools down the room a little bit. Otherwise, it's really hot in there in the afternoons.
They should call it hot jazz. Next slide.
Yes, next slide. Thank you guys for those questions. This will be really brief, but we are kind of looking into a wastewater treatment plant, solar and storage project. So that would be the same thing that I was kind of mentioning before on that previous slide, but we don't have a proposal for that yet. We've asked for one, so we're just waiting for the trade professional.
For the proposal on that, whether we build a new plant or upgrade the one we have or whatever, that plant will change significantly in the next few years. So is there any way to anticipate?
We're trying, talking to the guy that, because they do the same thing. They look at the power bills and we're like, well, what do you do for building a new plant? It's going to have a totally new profile. And they said they could factor that in. But,
Great.
the other feedback I'm getting is it may or may not make sense, that, massive production of solar is cheaper than trying to do it on site. And even with the new acreage we have, we have to just figure out if it makes sense or not. It may not.
Cool. Next slide. This is the last project that we're kind of considering. Miners Bend Park, where we would like to do a kind of overhead pavilion solar storage. And along with that, the solar would function to provide electricity to a couple electric vehicle charging stations. That would just kind of give tourists on the weekend like a place to charge their car as well as some shade, and then they can kind of go walk around the park and learn about the history of Sutter Creek while their car charges.
So that would shade parking places or the park?
The parking spots. Right, Tom?
Yeah.
I believe. Okay.
And those chargers are a pay for use?
It depends on which route you go. There are some like companies that you can basically like, I don't know if it'd be leasing from them, but they would install it for you at no cost, and then they like get to keep the profits. But then we
Kind of sounds like the different solar panel programs that are out there that
Mhm.
you own them or you lease them, but I get that. But the potential user though would use a credit card
Mhm.
to pay for
Yes.
the charging.
I mean, there's all models, right? It could be
Mhm.
2 hours of parking and then it starts to charge you or then starts to bill you, or,
Mhm.
or it could bill from the beginning, whatever we decide we want.
Yeah, depending on the company that you go through or which program, it'll look different. But, Next slide. So that's all I really have for today. But just to conclude, your highest energy users include the auditorium, admin building, community building, the grammar school, and the wastewater treatment plant. We're looking at several projects, including a solar and storage. Mostly the energy efficiency upgrades are going to be the quickest and probably make the most financial sense to do right away. And then there's other things that you guys can look into, like installing controls and load shifting and some of those things. again, just to reiterate, electricity and natural gas rates are continuing to increase, so we just want to combat that as much as possible. And along with that, we want to comply with the California 2030 and 2045 emissions goals. That would also likely set Sutter Creek up for more access to competitive state and federal funding in the future if you guys are planning or have a plan to meet those goals. Next slide. And
Great.
that's it.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Christina. Council, did you have any questions? Any more questions?
No, thank you. That spells it out pretty clearly.
So does this mean your time with us is up, Christina, or you'll follow up with the results of these?
Yeah, so I actually, since I'm a Civic Spark Fellow, my term ends at the end of August. So I don't have a ton of time left, but I'm continuing to follow up on the projects that we've been working with and trying to get some movement on the energy efficiency and solar and storage projects that we've started. So
We've had some other meetings. She also set up a meeting with PG&E. A lot of these programs are funded by PG&E
Yeah.
through these various companies, but there's another one with PG&E directly where if you commit to build chargers, they will upgrade it, I guess, from the transformer. But you have to have a plan. You have to show a plan. So again, we were getting a good education, trying to figure out what makes sense for Sutter.
yeah, so I'll basically be using the remainder of my time left to wrap up what we've been working on and kind of put together a status of all these projects and set you guys up so that it just doesn't get lost in thin air.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Audience? Okay, B on the administrative agenda, the ARSA JPA amendment. Tom?
Yeah, so this is a kind of a two-step process. This is just every member of the JPA agreeing to amend the JPA to allow the dissolution to happen probably several months from now. So the ARSA attorney thought this was the simplest and cleanest way to do that. I'm happy to answer any questions if you guys have looked at it.
Well, this was already, Jim and I already saw this. This was passed by the ARSA board already. So we would be the second board to look at it.
Correct. Actually, but it's not the ARSA board that passes this one. It's the county and Amador City and Sutter Creek as members of the JPA. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't have any questions. It looks pretty straight ahead. I appreciate it.
I would have put it on consent, but I figured you guys would pull it off, so.
What do you mean?
No.
Julia, I can't see you anymore. Are you good or?
Yeah, I was fine. I got a chance to read through it and, for what I understand with the ARSA process, it seemed pretty okay.
Okay, public? No, I'd hear a motion to go ahead and pass this.
So moved.
Is there a second?
A second.
Karen, can you do a roll call, please?
Councilmember Feist,
Aye.
Councilmember Reardon,
Aye.
Councilmember Swift,
Aye.
Councilmember Sirk,
I,
Mayor Gunzelman.
Aye.
It passes 5-0.
Okay, C, our budget. Tom, Mason?
Yeah, so tonight I think it's pretty short. We spent a lot of time going through it when we had the draft here. We made some kind of relatively minor tweaks, I think. So we cut about $100,000 from capital projects in the general fund That increased the general fund reserves to our target of about 40%. We also made some corrections really in how we were calculating some of the benefits where vacation pay was being included in the salary calculations. So pulling that out actually reduced, I think, some of the FICA costs and things, just basically got it more accurate. And there were a couple other minor tweaks. We also took your feedback about shifting projects. It didn't really change the cost, but we heard that and we'll include that. And I don't know, Mason, do you have any other updates?
That pretty much exhausts what we reviewed. One of the projects that we were mentioning, we talked about upgrading the camera software in here, but we shifted it over to maybe some upgrades over at the Historic Grammar School, just as an example. We talked about that. So that you should see that over in the AB 1600 section specifically for the Historic Grammar School now.
I guess we'll go to, we went through this pretty thoroughly last time, so we'll take it to council, and if you had any additional questions or comments, Dan?
I just comment and say that I appreciate, cutting off that 100, getting our reserve back up. We'll wait and see how the proposition goes and get some more dollars and those things and get right back to it here. But appreciate your work on that, and it all looks good to me.
Jim or Susan?
Yeah, I've got several. Maybe I just want clarification, or maybe I caught some things that I didn't catch before. You mentioned in your report at the back of Mason that the RMA came in lower, and then I see where that you just said that it was lower than expected. It looks like it was about $25,000, correct?
For the insurance cost?
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
But that didn't affect the liability or anything, other insurance costs that went up so much, just to be clear.
They didn't affect our coverage in any way, if that's what you're asking.
No, I meant our premiums on
They give us like
the general liability
they
insurance.
gave us an early estimate that people use for budgeting, and then they gave us the actual number, which was less.
Oh, good.
It kind of bases, they have an early number, and then they look at performance, how they're performing, or JPA for the year. They get more numbers as time goes on. And if they see that they're doing well with investments or whatever it might be, their income, they give a credit, or they might ask more from the participants. But this year they actually did fairly well, so they gave the cities a credit, and so they apply it to the cities, and it gave us a lower premium for the year.
Okay. And then on that same page, which is number 91 of the packet, or it's page 6 of this budget section, where you mention or state about the reduction of about $25,000. It's under the heading of discussion. Number 4 says, general fund savings are in the general fund reserve, increasing reserves to our target of 40% of total general fund expenses. What exactly does that statement mean? It's a little confusing to me.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think I wrote it. So again, that kind of the adjustments from the first 3 items, the amount left in the general reserve is 40% of the annual expense. So it's like, how much do we have saved? We would have enough to cover 40%.
Are we, I know we are using reserves for capital projects. Is there any in the budget where we're actually putting money back into the reserves, or does that be for another year, like next year?
I actually think this reserve is higher at being at 40% than it, well, it's hard to say because we shifted some things around and we merged some of those accounts. Yeah, so I actually have to go back. I think we did spend down the general fund reserve, but we increased the wastewater reserve.
Right.
I think the way I read it, and maybe it's wrong, is at the end of the year, the projected end of the year, we're going to have 40% rather than last month when we looked at this, it was 35. And
Correct.
at some point, we had indicated that we wanted to be closer to
Sure,
40.
But versus the reserve today in the general fund, I think it's less.
Sure.
Right, because we didn't spend some of that last year.
Right.
Then let's go to page 94 and 95 of the packet. Which is the summary of total revenues and total expenses. I like that. I process big picture stuff better than the really the small details. So the grand total for revenues is 6.613 million rounded off, and grand total for expenditures 7.927, let's call it rounded off, for a difference of 1.314 million. So the difference, that amount, is what we're covering with reserves on these capital projects. I see the capital projects come up to about 2.6 million.
So, yeah,
So if you were to take out if you were just to take out all capital projects, we would be and didn't use reserves, the day-to-day budget would be in balance, we wouldn't be negative in the balance, in the budget, correct? I just want to be clear on that.
yeah, if we didn't have any of our wastewater projects or any of we have two streets projects.
Right.
We'd be, and you wouldn't see as nearly as much of a deficit at all had we not, because wastewater is what, 1 point some odd $1 million in
0.6,
capital.
yeah,
Right.
And then
Right.
streets has Oro Madre and it has Eureka
Right.
Road, which was,
okay.
pretty
That's-
close to
I-
$1 million, I would believe.
That's a good point, Jim.
I just think it's
That's,
important to.
Yeah,
point
no,
out,
Yeah.
First one-time costs versus recurring. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Right, then, let's see, just have a couple other little questions. And this kind of ties into the presentation that we just had. The AT&T lease at 34, well, it's 35,000, it looks like, for this.
Sorry, Jim, can I get a page?
35,000 for the AT&T lease.
Can I get a page number?
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm on page 106
Okay,
of the packet.
sorry.
Okay.
Okay,
The general fund revenue account detail.
I see it. Yeah, AT&T
Uh,
lease.
I just wanted to point out that that lease has a provision for that they pay utilities. And in the past, it's always been kind of, there was some difficulty in because of the way that's metered, it has to be parsed out.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that you're aware of that and that's happening, that AT&T is getting billed for utilities.
I'm glad you mentioned that. We did a project on the auditorium where they have a separate meter for
Okay, they do.
for their, what do you want to call it?
Equipment, call it equipment. Yeah.
On the roof of the auditorium.
Right.
And every month I go out there on the second of every month, I take a photo of the meter
Okay.
and I track it, and then I invoice their third-party billing company called Cass. The name is Cass. I just sent the bill. We do it quarterly, and we charge it back against the actual PG&E costs for the auditorium. And so this is just for the lease, but you'll see PG&E costs, the expense line be
Okay.
lower because we charge it back against that,
All right,
almost like a
fantastic.
reimbursement.
I just
But yeah, no,
popped into my head that.
Yep.
And I just wanted to make sure that was happening.
and they
Okay.
got a whole different new meter on the side of the building now. They did it a few months
Dedicated
ago.
for the-
Dedicated just for that. Yep.
Okay, perfect. And this is just a question. General fund, Department 1,000. It says Department 1,000, non-departmental. What is that? What is that exactly?
That is
Thank you.
all of our CalPERS unfunded accrued liability costs.
Okay. Okay,
And those are separated between general fund and
Okay.
wastewater.
great. And in regards to those unfunded liabilities, does it do any good to ask the question, is CalPERS gonna, what is their responsibility? And it seems like this all gets shifted to the cities or whatever entity that are participating in CalPERS. do they have any long-range plan about, because this could be disastrous for a lot of people, and do they have any addressing that?
Well, so we did get good news. I guess the return this year was higher than their discount rate. But they do these in 30-year cycles. So having a good return won't really start to impact us for
Right.
several years. But the other thing they're doing is they're adjusting that normal rate. Used to be really high, and it was 7%. Now it's what, 6.8? It's supposed to continue to go down. I think it goes to 6.5 maybe next year. And so they go down, they wait a couple years, and then they go down. So they're going to
Yeah.
keep bringing that down to a realistic return.
It seems like a Band-Aid.
Well, that's
There seems to
key.
be a structural
I mean, there
problem.
would be no UAL if they always hit their investment. So it's really a key thing. If they continue to bring that down, then their performance returns will actually pay for the UAL.
Yeah,
Okay.
so so basically, if their baseline gets lower and lower every few years, and their returns are able to stabilize at this year they got like 9.2. It was really good. But let's just say it's like 7.2 or something. But their baseline keeps going down and down and down. That UAL is following that lower and lower baseline. And if their returns remain the same, that UAL gets paid down faster and faster, basically. So that's
Right.
that's their lever, is that
Right.
as long as they can bring that discount rate down and down and down, and their returns stay the same, that'll pay it off faster, and the cities will feel that.
Okay. Next question, page 117. I'm sure this is no big deal, and there's a reasonable answer. Under the police budget, it has PG&E utilities, 2021, 22, 8,000. Then the next year, 5,618. And then last year, says under actual 23, 24, it's just zero. And now we're budgeted 7,000. Is that just we moved something around? We didn't account
I'm gonna
differently?
I'm gonna jump back to what we just talked about, which was those PG&E cost for AT&T reimbursement. So we got a lump sum payment for them because they weren't paying it.
Uh-huh.
And so we reimbursed a bunch of accounts this year for PG&E costs, and they were one
okay,
of
so
them.
that was that. All right, see,
Because they're in the auditorium.
there's an answer that makes total sense.
So it was a big payment. It kind of brought some of the accounts even like we got a credit.
Right.
So, but
Instead of
moving
spreading it out on all the accounts, you just,
they sent us one payment for all the
and you
utilities.
applied it to certain, okay, that makes sense. And, all right. This, page 138 and 139. Oh, I guess it starts on 139, the Crestview Lighting District. And it was mentioned earlier about we need to do a possible update on the rates or something on that. So, and in the finance budget, Crestview has got budgeted for like $8,000 or something in the finance department. And then I see, just kind of explain that page to me.
Sure. So
Why this, finance here, 10,088 under expenditures for finance.
we charged a little bit of, we charge administrative time myself administering annually to basically tracking, administering the Crestview, making sure the billing gets out, and we get our money. We did, I think it's 1%.
It's going to come in less than this. Yeah.
Yeah, but I did the 1%, the lowest that I could go, just to show that I'm charging for finance administrative costs that I do, to make sure that we're at least recouping the money that I'm spending some of my time doing.
So 1% is 10,000?
No,
That's a pretty good salary you got.
so we did this. Yeah, we did this some time ago. I'm saying it's going to come in at a lot less. We've
Okay.
actually been working on this staff report for Crestview.
Okay,
And I told Mason, let's just cover the electrical costs
okay,
and try to minimize the administrative overhead.
Yeah.
okay. So it's kind of out of whack, but it's on the radar and it's gonna be addressed.
Correct. Yeah, it won't cost nearly that much to administer this program.
Okay.
There's only 53 parcels. It's
Okay.
So is that budget area that can be adjusted? I mean, the total expenditures, I mean, I always saw that went from 338 to 11,000. Is that accurate?
Sorry, Julia, I lost you. Are you talking
Under
about?
expenditures on that same page? Um,
Oh, I
where it
see.
says total expenditures, I mean, it jumped from 338 to a little over 11,000.
Yeah, well,
Obviously that 10,000 plays into that, but is that accurate that we need to put that much in?
No, now that Tom and I have talked about it, and we've been talking about revising Crestview billing in general, I don't think that's an accurate number. That could be significantly lower, the staffing cost from my department.
Okay.
Well, because it skews, the line down below,
Yes.
the excess or deficit, is a negative $8,500. That
Right.
doesn't look right.
yeah, we'll fix it. If you guys approve the budget tonight, we'll also take a direction to fix this.
Okay. And is there so I see in the ending fund balance, 5152, 6182, then 8549. Is there a capital reserve for that lighting, for the lighting district, and if not, should there be, or does PG&E absorb the capital costs, or I'm unclear.
We don't have a specific fund just for Crestview reserves. This fund the purpose of this fund is to administer the entire program in its totality. So any fund balance that we might have could go towards a capital improvement that we might want to do. Like I noticed on an older Crestview report, they had mentioned that they wanted to swap the lights for LEDs, which I think happened in the last few years. But that's an example of something that we could do if we had extra funds in here. Like let's say we budgeted, or the amount we're collecting from them might be less than the charges we incur for a year, for example. We could use some of that extra money we collected to do upgrades or repair something.
Or we
I-
can
I
make
s-
the Dark Skies initiative.
I assume there are specific rules that apply to these utility or districts, special districts, that like a nexus study is,
Identify.
you can't collect more than is expended, that kind of thing.
That's what this report is coming to you guys in
Okay.
August.
I-
Very, very simple.
I'll just,
report.
yeah, I'll leave it there and let that happen. So that's all the questions that I have.
Susan?
I just want to say thank you for everyone that worked on this. It's really well done, and I feel really secure about it, and I'm thankful for you both.
Yeah, really appreciate the formatting too. It's different.
Julia?
I had three kind of more general questions, but yes, I'd like to say that this is so much easier to read and to work through and to try to decipher than our reports in the past. And thank you, Mason and Tom, for all the work. One is, I know we got hit with the one-time expenses, the animal control and the dispatch costs, dispatch increases. How can we either safeguard or can we plan and protect ourselves from those or potential, one-time hits in the future? That's my first question. Or do we just say, we got hit with another $90,000 from two different sources and we got to find a way to cover it?
It's pretty tough. I mean, we're kind of at the whim of the county. I would say, talk to your county supervisor and we
Well,
gotta
no,
try-
but how do we possibly protect ourselves in the future?
Yeah.
I mean, does
Well, you
that
can-
mean that we have more than a 40% reserve just in case? Is that a possible thought, or is the 40% reserve adequate to be able to cover hits like this?
Well, I think it's adequate. You have to make a trade-off. And again, the police chiefs of Ione, Sutter Creek, Jackson are talking, and if it keeps going up, at some point, it might make sense to have our own dispatch, for
Right.
example.
But in my mind, that's really not how you would use your reserves. Your reserves would be if you took a real hit on, well, if you, when you get hit with these, you got to find you got to cut somewhere else, or if you start using reserves every time possible, whether the
Well, that's what I'm
insurance goes
afraid
up
of,
or this-
yes.
or the insurance goes up, or these dispatching or animal control that we get hit with that, if you use your reserves, you're in a death spiral.
Well, that's what I'm afraid of.
Well, and I had a question about that too. Is there a way to better open the communication lines between the city and the county so that they don't think that I mean, those are huge bills to just decide.
There was a lot of
That
back and
animal
forth.
control was discussed over time, and we fought with them on it, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All I was saying about reserves, if it's an emergency, but yeah, I agree. We have to cut somewhere else to pay for this ongoing.
Yeah.
It's just, there's these spikes, that makes it even harder.
And my next question would, it's along the similar line, is do we consider, or have we considered a long-term plan for possible, probable CalPERS increases that will come back and hit us again in the future?
And are you you're talking about the unfunded accrued liabilities to clarify?
Correct.
Tom and I have talked to some investment companies about a Section 115 trust to invest some money in, and you're able to invest those funds in vehicles that aren't normally you're able not to allowed to invest in as a municipality or as a government agency. So we're able to put ourselves more out in the market to maybe make a little more money than normal, and not just bonds and
Well, since
like.
you brought that up, we've got show $50,000 into that
That's right.
right now.
Correct.
Has that
Mhm.
been made, or is that, okay, that's in the budget to
Yeah.
To send the
to
money
be, okay,
to fund
Right.
that, to start the
Okay.
process of kind of like a backup in
right.
case there's a huge
Okay.
spike, they have a bad year.
So that is one way or to address future costs.
It's to safeguard ourselves
But
from a spike.
it's, whether it's enough or not,
Well,
it just helps.
It helps, but
We get a little more
It's a
return.
start.
it's a start, and it's a better than nothing. If CalPERS has a bad year, their discount rate's 6 and they get 2 or 3. That's not good. So that just helps us defend against that if that happens. Or even during COVID where it was negative. That was really bad too.
And then my final is just a comment question, is just a concern of, are we cutting capital projects and capital improvement projects because of the growing expense of um, of just like the CalPERS and these other hits? What are we taking a hit in our plans for capital improvement?
So again, I think the point Jim was making is that our revenue exceeds our expenses. One thing I've been trying to do since I got here is to budget for their capital projects, right? And
Yes.
so this budget is just an exercise in priorities of how much are we going to put against capital. We kind of went through the whole budget, looked at all the expenses, and so there's more in here for capital than you've had in the past. So no, I wouldn't say we're cutting capital because of CalPERS.
But there was there was just a comment made earlier, and it just struck, and I didn't see that in the budget, but I wanted to clarify it.
Yeah. If we did less capital projects, we would have more money to do other things, but I'm recommending that we do
Well,
some
And
of these capital
And
projects.
if,
And that was in our priorities that we established, is that, some of those projects. So, okay. Thank you.
We would certainly be better off if dispatching hadn't gone up
Oh, absolutely.
$55,000 and animal control. Now that 43,000, is that a not to exceed number? Okay, that's an estimate of what sort of a upper end.
So it's the
maximum.
cost per call, so we're gonna be
Okay.
very motivated to keep our calls down.
And yes, and we need, yeah, and I think, just to repeat what I've asked before is, we need to be very vigilant about auditing these, where these calls are generated and whether indeed they should be, billed
Within
to
city
Sutter
limits.
Creek.
Yeah.
And didn't the
Yeah.
county, oops, sorry, didn't the county just agree on this figure for this year? And whether it's better or worse, we don't know, but we'll be facing something else with them next year. Julia, are you good?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, public? If there's nothing else from the council, I'd hear a motion to pass the budget and then, let's see, there's to adopt the resolution, adopting the budget, and to adopt the resolution, adopting the annual appropriations limit.
So moved.
Second,
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Karen, will you do a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Feist,
Aye.
Councilmember Reardon,
Aye.
Councilmember Swift,
Aye.
Councilmember Sirk,
aye.
Mayor Gunzelman,
Aye.
and 5-0.
Okay. Thanks, Mason. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, everybody else that worked on it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Takes us to the striping project at the park here.
Yes, so we plan to bring you guys a bunch of these. This is the first one. And it's looking at the parking spots here in the park. So just by restriping, we think we can get 5 or 6 more spots. There's also a handicap spot on the end that needs a little bit of work. After this report, I think the next thing we're going to look at is parking on the streets, not just on Main Street, but on some of the sides and like Boston Alley and places that aren't marked at all. But this is just the first one, so happy to answer any questions.
So a little history. If you notice in your aerial view that when you get down to this end, closest to where we are, the parking spaces get shorter, and down at the other end, they're longer. That's just the space that's available. And there used to be, it used to be striped just as you see it, as you're proposing. And it was, the reason it was changed to the parallel parking on this end was because of a safety factor. The cars stick way out into the traffic lane, leaving no room for pedestrians. There's kids entering and exiting and having to walk, darting out between the cars into the street. That's why it is the way it is now. And I foresee if we go back to this, we're just going to recreate that issue. And I think it needs to really be looked at. And maybe it said something about we would create compact spaces. How many times have you parked in a space where you pull in and it says compact and you're not in a compact car, but you park there anyway? Designating them as compact. And Chief O'Connell, do you have any thoughts about that? Maybe the thing to do would be to get some city vehicles and employees and park them diagonally there and just actually see what you got, because I think it was, there was good reason to eliminate the diagonal parking there, and I don't want to just go right back and regret that we did it, even though we need the parking spaces. That you got to put, I think, safety first. Right. I think the thing to do is park some cars there and take a look at it before you approve it and go ahead.
Yeah, we'll definitely look. I know Dan you can see there's like a gap there. I think the idea was the pedestrians would walk next to that fence, but I hear what you're saying. If there's not parking
Of course,
blocks there.
of course, we've got restricted streets on the north end of Main Street. We've got like Spanish Street. It's pretty much in areas, it's just a one-way street, but there's a lot of traffic on it. This is only one of two. You got Gopher Flat and this to serve all of the Shake Ridge area and Sutter Creek Volcano Road. So there is quite a bit of traffic and people do go faster than they should. So
That is a
It-
good
It would,
point, Jim, too, because there is that, you would send your kids to the front to walk across the fence, except when you go to the park, you got to get a bunch of junk out of the back of your car, which is hanging out into the road. I hadn't thought of that.
that's with the understanding that all parking on, I guess it would be the opposite side of Church Street would be eliminated. So there will be no parallel parking or crowding there. So I guess my question is the distance between what is drawn in with the existing fog line and the other side of the street, is that still adequate for safe two-way traffic?
I didn't understand that the parallel parking on the other side of the street is eliminated. Is that right?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't
never-
think so.
Okay. So there would still be the parallel parking on the opposite side on Church Street in addition to these
Jim probably knows there's a couple places where I don't think you can park. It's too narrow.
would be,
right?
that'd be pretty tight.
across the street? Well, people do it all.
Doesn't it vary in certain
Yeah.
locations?
You mean on the opposite side?
Yeah.
Where they
Correct.
parallel park? Well, it's tight, but
That's what I'm
I've done it
afraid
many
of.
times when I've attended meetings here, and to be honest, if this really comes down, I may have to step away because
Yeah.
I own this house across the street.
Well, I think your idea of a low-cost test, that's a
Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
easy
why
one.
not?
Yeah, that makes really good sense to me
Yeah.
also, Jim. I
Yeah.
appreciate.
Yeah, also when they, you got to swing wide to pull in at that angle. So by doing it with our own vehicles, we could check that out. In my big mom van, I do a U-turn before I pull in at that angle
Yeah.
over there. So
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say about the thing I haven't liked about the parallel parking is here is you do have to go U-turn and then I haven't done the load
You,
in. when
you would
go
have to
all
do a
the-
if you've got a larger
Correct.
vehicle, you're probably gonna have to do a U-turn either right in the street practically to park it or go down and where it's wider and come back because it's
Yeah.
not easy to swing in,
That-
to
that's
do a
what's
diagonal
exactly-
from the opposite direction.
So I think we're seeing kick it back to staff for in-house testing. Is that what I'm hearing, guys?
I mean, so do you guys want to approve it with testing? You want us to bring it back?
Let's bring it back. Let's do the testing.
Yes.
That would Be my druthers would
I'd
be,
like more information. Yeah.
let's be aware of when the testing is so we can come down and lay eyes on it ourselves as well,
Okay.
if you would, please.
And then I understand off to the left, I don't know if you can scroll over, Karen. We used to have buses parked there, so I think we want to keep that the other direction. Yeah, so they're in front of the playground. I think we want to keep that as like a loading zone, no parking area, just so we have the option of having tour buses and things.
Where is that, Tom?
Right there.
That
Right on the
existing
end
fog
there.
line? That-
Yes, today it's like a loading zone, no parking area.
Okay.
I think we're going to keep it that way.
Yeah.
So,
All of that said, I appreciate,
Oh,
staff working on parking ideas, and I like the fact that you're going to bring them to them piece at a time and not the whole city at once.
I don't want to.
Please keep it up. Yeah,
Right. Yeah, I don't want to dampen enthusiasm, but I just
it's your fault,
have
Jim.
concerns about this.
I just never felt like how it was before there was an issue, I guess was my point. No, I mean, because didn't it used to be
Back
this
when it
way?
used to be,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I felt like this has always been like, what'd they do with all the parking?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay.
If I remember right, it wasn't at a slant. It was just straight ahead and straight out. It wasn't slanted like it is now.
Yeah, I think so. Do you remember? Jim?
I honestly, I can't, I thought it was diagonal, I mean, or rather, yeah, the diagonal. It may have been the perpendicular.
I can't remember.
I don't think you can park there perpendicular, even close to getting it, and not be 3 feet into over the fog line if you're
Yeah.
perpendicular with a pickup.
Okay, well, it's good feedback. We'll set up a test, have you guys check it out.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. That takes us to mayor and council member reports. We'll start on the other side. Susan? Jim?
No.
Dan?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Julia?
Would now be appropriate to discuss the bike ped proposal, Tom, or would you rather just do that in August?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay. At our last bike ped meeting, John Gedney came up with a proposal after a discussion came up with the result that the overall plan that we had ideally set up between Amador City and Sutter Creek and submit that plan to the ACTC for their grant funding. At this last meeting, it was said, well, if we do that, you know, the city's got to kick in a little money, a little, you know, skin in the game, which was kind of a new conversation point. So Sandy Staples, who is the mayor of Amador City, was there, and we kind of looked like, well, that wasn't part of a discussion prior. So as it turns out, the cost of what we would like to have seen done is probably going to be plus at whatever now the cities are expected. It's not going to match up in the city, and because most of the project is in between the city limits out Turner Road. So Sandy Staples and I agreed that it doesn't pay for us to pay for a project where most of the expense is going to be outside of our city limits. Therefore, each city was going to go back. So the master plan idea within a matter of minutes was pretty much scrapped as far as a master plan to present to ACTC. And it's left back now to the cities to see what we can do on our own. So John did write up a proposal. John Gedney wrote up a proposal, and I gave a copy to Tom regarding the general belief that, yes, we want increased safety and access for bike and pedestrians between the two towns. And it is going to be up to each city to individualize on how those goals are met. What my proposal was to Tom is that the city of Sutter Creek still accept a master proposal as a goal, but to also be committed to adopt our own proposal where signage is added to direct routes, crosswalks are added or improved for safety, and at Amelia and Old Highway 49, and then also at Gopher Flat, and then a crosswalk crossing at Gopher Flat is actually modified to be in line with the adjusting the stop sign. So the stop sign coming off of Gopher Flat is actually closer to the highway than setback as it is. So those I hope to discuss with Tom and Dan. And those would be minimum, fairly low cost proposals that would reach and work towards the master plan of increasing access between Amador City and Sutter Creek.
But Julia, so what happened to the money that John had? Does he still have?
The money is there, the grant money is there, but what came what was new in the discussion at our last meeting is that ACTC and the Board of Supervisors, it would be the next step, want to see, what the cities want to contribute on their own. And as it turned out, and he gave a rough estimate of about 10 to 15% of the total cost. Well, that 10 to 15% of the total cost probably was going to exceed, for example, what Sutter Creek would have to pay just for the items that I mentioned. So Sandy and I agreed that what we would be paying for is for improvements between the two cities that are actually in the county. So we didn't think it was financially responsible for either one of us to say, yeah, we're going to kick in, and commit $10,000 to a project that is that $10,000, that 10% is going to be more than if we just individually paid for our city responsibilities and projects.
But then
So,
the county's not committing to do the work on the connection in between, are they?
well, they want to see a master plan, which is what the two cities were part of. But as it turns out, the master plan now is going to be more costly to the individual cities, that would be higher than if we just did our own part and left the county to, deal with, or, our committee continue to work with ACTC and see. But, to kick in $10,000 of this master grant, that's going to be more costly than what we would need just as our cities, to me,
Right.
wasn't financially responsible.
So one more question. So if the cities commit to doing the work in the cities, will the county commit to completing the project?
We don't know that. Right now, I think it's how can we make our first steps? And if we come back to the county and say, okay, here's what we've done, here's what we've taken care of, would you step forward? That's yet to be decided, and we don't think we can predict that right now.
I think this is too much for the rest of the four of us to digest.
Correct. And I
Like this,
would
so.
like to sit with Dan and Tom and actually come up with a proposal or a resolution leading towards improvements that our city can actually afford to make, leading towards a master goal of improved access and safety for pedestrians and cyclists.
Yeah, so there was a resolution that looked like it was committing us to expenses, but there was no estimates of costs. So
Correct.
I think we need to get with John Gedney and just figure out, so that when it comes to you guys, there's some expenses attached to it.
Great.
Correct.
Okay, thanks, Julia. Did I do you, Dan? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
City Attorney's report. Elizabeth?
Nothing from me.
Future agenda items. I think we kind of just discussed one. Anyone else? Nope. Okay, any comments on the information and correspondence? Nobody. Okay. Unless there's anything else, we're going to go ahead and adjourn into closed session.
Thank you.
So Julia needs to stay on, but Karen, I guess you need to